It's a good time to be getting into surround music. There's a lot of albums that are readily available at a lower price point. It's a wide breadth of different styles and genres. I think the fact that there's more different styles of music from different decades and different eras available in surround can only be a good thing.
Yeah. And I feel like being interested in immersive audio has opened me up to a lot of bands that I don't think I would have ever given an ear to. Well, hello there, Ian here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, my colleague Jonathan Cornell is here, and we are going to talk about some entry-level 5.1 Dolby Atmos and indeed one quad title. So the premise of this video is, say you have somebody very generous in your life who has donated a surround sound system to you, or indeed you've decided to build your own Atmos system in one way or another, and you're thinking, what are the best titles to start with? All of the records that we're going to be talking about in the course of this video are currently in print. We checked. And with the exception of maybe one or two, they're all under $30. So they're relatively affordable.
I would imagine that for someone just getting into the whole Atmos 5.1 music thing, it's kind of daunting figuring out where to get stuff from, because there's a lot of titles that are out of print. There's a lot of them that are limited editions, like the SDE releases. Sometimes they're only in box sets. Like, it's a little bit confusing unless you're kind of in the know about it. But we both did some research, and we found that at least at this point in time in July 2026, if you go on Amazon and you search for Dolby Atmos Blu-ray or 5.1 Blu-ray, there are quite a few interesting releases that come in at around under $30 USD. So I think this is as good a time as any to start building a collection. I mean, when I first got into surround maybe like 10 years ago, there was nowhere near as much stuff to buy. So that's kind of where the idea for the video came from.
First off, we have a collection of albums from the surround mix master, Steven Wilson, an artist who we talk about quite a bit on this channel, either through his original music and also his work remixing catalog titles such as Jethro Tull, Gentle Giant, King Crimson, XTC, and so on.
I think what's great about him is that he works on such a wide breadth of material. So of course we mentioned his own music. So you have the Harmony Codex and the Overviewer, the two most recent albums. I'm not necessarily sure these are the ones like I'd use to introduce somebody to his music. They're not quite as accessible as some of his earlier albums. I think like Hand Cannot Erase would maybe be the one I would start with, or The Raven. And of course you can download the Atmos versions of those. Those are on the Headphone Dust platform. They have their MKV downloads with True HD audio. But talking about some of the remixes, I mean, we mentioned kind of he built his brand doing some of these more like esoteric kind of prog albums. So talking about like the Gentle Giant series, for example, the reissues of a Freehand Interview and The Missing Piece are all still in print and readily available. There's also the recent XTC reissues. Some of these are out of print, but you can for sure get the Atmos editions of Drums and Wires and Skylarking.
Yes, and it should be mentioned that today they announced an Atmos upgrade for what's it called? Surroundabout Ride, which is the Dukes of Stratosphere albums.
Which is great because the original Dukes of Stratosphere reissue from 2019 is out of print. Or at least it was for a long time. We also have on our list the King Crimson albums. So recently we had Lizard and In the Wake of Poseidon were both reissued with new Atmos mixes. We did a review of these, of course, which people can find on the channel. There's also the reissues of Red and Lark's Tongues and Aspic, which have Atmos, but I think these are more on the expensive side. Granted, there's more content on them. They come in these more elaborate kind of hard shell editions. And I wish they would do a reissue of In the Court of the Crimson King with the Atmos mix, because it's only in that huge box set.
Yes, which I have behind me, and I've shown on the channel before. But the Atmos In the Court of the Crimson King is one of my very favorite mixes. Now, this is a good opportunity as any, since you were talking about doing a search for Dolby Atmos Blu-ray on Amazon, to remind folks that I am including Amazon affiliate links to many of these releases in the description. So if any of these titles that we're talking about seem interesting to you, go look at the description. And if you do purchase via my Amazon affiliate link, it does benefit the channel in a very small but meaningful way. So back to you, Jonathan.
You briefly mentioned Tull, of course, a band that is frequently mentioned on this channel. As far as what's available and what isn't, some of the original 40th anniversary editions have been repressed. Some of them haven't. We're talking about the first round of reissues that have Steven's 5.1 mixes. But I think the one we would both kind of recommend to people to get started is the recent Still Living in the Past.
Yes.
Which is kind of as close to like it's sort of like a compilation of the early years of Tull. Not quite a greatest hits, but some of their biggest hits are on it, like Locomotive Breath.
Well, it's actually meant to be a gap filler between the singles and the albums, because back then it's sort of like now with streaming, where there was a distinct singles market where you'd have, an A and a B side, and a distinct albums market. And after 1971, with the cancellation of the Lick Your Fingers Clean single, Tull no longer had separate singles and albums. Their singles were on their albums. But what Living in the Past does is it fills in the gaps of some songs that aren't on the records, but you also get the EP, the Life's a Long Song EP, and you get just a couple of studio outtakes. Now, what Still Living in the Past does is it adds some singles that weren't on the original double LP release, and it also greatly expands the third side of the record, which was 2 tracks taken from Carnegie Hall Live in 1970. And with this release, we get the full show. And I was going to mention this to you before we started recording, but Steven did the Lord's work in cleaning up that live concert, because it is sounding better than ever. It's also worth mentioning that we've been kind of following these rumors about Atmos reissues of Tull stuff, and it's looking like we are going to get standalone versions of Aqualung and Warchild on Blu-ray very soon. And had they been announced by now, we probably would have included those on our recommendations, just because they are Steven Wilson remixes. And the thing about Steven's work is that it's consistent. He's one of those Atmos engineers that if his name's on a product, you can buy with a certain sense of confidence and security.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Just to kind of briefly close out like the sort of 70s prog section of this discussion, there's also, we should mention, even though they're not on my list, the upcoming Yes Blu-rays, the standalone editions.
Yeah.
Even though they're not out yet. Yeah.
The Yes album,
Edge. Yeah.
Close to the Edge, Fragile. And those are going to come out at the end of this month. It's also worth mentioning that you have the Pink Floyd at Pompeii film. And this is, of course, the 4K edition, which people are still clamoring for me to review. And, maybe one day I'll get around to it. But this is available, both the Blu-ray and the 4K, for around $30. And Steven has remixed the entire performance. I didn't say live show or concert. The entire performance in 5.1 and Atmos with the film. So, you can either watch this as a film and enjoy it, or you can just play it as the audio only portion, shut your TV monitor off, and you have a great Pink Floyd album mixed in Atmos. So I would highly recommend either the 4K or the Blu-ray. People were asking me all the time if the 4K looks better. It does, but it's like, depends on your monitor, what kind of player you have, how big your monitor is, and if you're willing to spend $5 extra or not. So yeah, I would heartily recommend either version of this, because on both the mixes are the same.
I know that like some people were kind of skeptical of like how much an improvement it would be, because there was the 2016 remix that Andy Jackson did of the whole Pompeii performance. It was part of that early years box set, and then it was released kind of as a standalone edition. But I think there's no comparison. The version by Steven is remarkably improved.
Yeah. Well, the version I had was the DVD from the 90s, and this is an enormous upgrade over that.
It's the definitive version. Like I can't imagine them wanting to mix that release again. Like it's going to be the last one, I hope.
I hope. And this is a good opportunity to point out that James Guthrie has done remixes of Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and Animals, which are available. So it's worth mentioning those.
Yeah. So kind of jumping into the 80s section of Steven Wilson's discography. Recently we got Phil Collins' No Jacket Required, which could there be an album that's sort of more representative of the 80s than this one? I mean, I think it's a great record, and we should mention as well that they've just announced a similar edition of Face Value.
Yes.
Which I am so excited for, because I mean everybody wants to know what's the drum break in the air tonight going to sound like in surrounds. So this is a great standalone release from Rhino that you can get through most online retailers, including Amazon. And we also had the 3 recent New Order releases: Movement, Low Life, and Brotherhood. So I've got 2 out of 3 here. And this is kind of more in the like experimental realm as far as 80s stuff goes, particularly that first album, Movement. The latter 2 have more of like a kind of dance rock sound, I want to say, something like that. I mean, we did a review of these back when they came out last December.
Yeah. In general, I'll try to link our longer reviews in the recommended videos section at the end of the video, so stick around. Jonathan and I are fond of talking about some of these releases for an hour or more. We're trying to stick to kind of entry level, shorter runtime for this video, but we definitely do have much more in-depth conversations if you want to go check that out.
Yeah, we're really kind of just blazing through these for this video because we've got other stuff to get to. But,
yes.
To sort of round out the kind of Steven Wilson portion of this discussion, some other ones I would mention are Van Morrison's Moondance. And this is a great release because it comes not only with Steven's Atmos mix, but also the 5.1 mix that Elliot Shiner did maybe 10 years ago. And I think both mixes are excellent in their own ways. I mean, Elliot Shiner was the original mixing engineer for this record way back in 1968 or 69, I think. So yeah, this is highly recommended. And of course, the second Chicago album.
Oh, yes.
Which I think, I don't know if I was on it with you, but I know you did a long form review of this at some point.
I don't know if I did a long form review. I think I did a very brief review of this and didn't pick up a whole lot of traction, but this is a sonic overhaul from the original mix, which is very muddy, very congested, and it almost sounds like a new record. Now, kind of picking up with what you pointed out about that Van Morrison Blu-ray, there is a Legacy 5.1 and quad mix included with this release.
So this is like if you're a fan of this record, like you get pretty much all the mixes on here. I think the one mix that isn't on here is the original stereo version. I think they use Steven's stereo mix in lieu of it. But yes, it has the 5.1 mix that was released on DVD, like 25 years ago, and the original quad mix, which was on the long out of print now Chicago Quadio box set.
Yeah. If this contained the original mix, I would say it's the ultimate edition of this album, but it's pretty close as it stands. It's definitely the ultimate multi-channel edition of this album.
I mean, the Atmos mix is like the only version of this album that I want to listen to now.
Same.
I mean, it's so adventurous, like with horn solos coming out of the ceiling, like guitars next to you. It's really cleverly done and enjoyable. So, and it's also a favorite album of mine. So I'm thrilled.
It's an example of doing a lot with very, very little.
Yes. And then I think the last one I'll mention for this portion of discussion is one we've talked about a lot lately, which is Jeff Buckley's Grace.
Oh, yes.
We just talked about it a lot on our best of 2026 so far video. We also talked about it at length in another video. So I won't really elaborate that much. I mean, it's one of the iconic albums of the 90s. It's another example of sort of cleverly pulling apart like a relatively organic kind of stripped down record. It works better in surround than you might expect, particularly some of the kind of sparser songs like Hallelujah. So, and like I said in that other video, this could so easily have been one that was in like a $200 box set, and it's on a $20 Blu-ray. So go for it.
It's a trend that I hope to see continue It's only been like within the past 6 months that we've seen a lot of these standalone discs come out, and makes me think the record labels are listening to you folks in the comments who are saying, I don't want to pay a bunch of money for stuff I don't want. I just want the Blu-ray. So
yeah, I think the breakouts for the Yes ones in particular was a real surprise to me.
Yeah,
but it was a good surprise.
Sure.
So moving on in this discussion, one that I want to mention is that there were a lot of surround releases kind of in the early 2000s. That was kind of when one of the last times that surround music was relaunched, like with the SACD and DVD formats. And a lot of those discs are out of print and really hard to find. Some of the mixes have been reissued, like when they've redone the albums in Atmos. Like we mentioned with Chicago, they put the old early 2000s 5.1 mix on there. There's a lot of great stuff from that period that's unfortunately hard to get now. But one that has interestingly remained in print all this time is the Dire Straits Brothers in Arms album. Yeah. So this album was remixed for its then 20th anniversary in 2005. The mix was done by Chuck Ainlay, and it won the Grammy at the time for Best Surround Album. And it is a really great surround mix. So there was a DVD audio edition, which is what I've got here. And there's also an SACD version. And the SACD, for whatever reason, even though it came out, more than 20 years ago, you could still order it on Amazon today for like $18.
Yeah.
So I think, if you're a fan of this album, I think it's one of the iconic 80s albums, and it's, a sonic masterpiece. Like, it's always one of those albums that sounded great no matter what you played it on. Yeah. I think this is kind of a no-brainer as an entry-level surround release.
Yeah, and I have to confess, I don't have that one. And, there have been so many times where I've come close to snapping it up, and, you've almost sold me on that one. So maybe after this video is complete, I'll have to grab it.
I would mention as well that there was an SDE Blu-ray release of it last year that also came with a new Atmos mix. But in this case, I think the 5.1 mix is still the best version.
Oh, is that right?
Not that the Atmos mix is like bad or anything, but I think the 5.1 mix is still the one for me.
Yeah.
Which is unusual. Usually I tend to prefer when they do a new Atmos mix. I generally find it superior, but not in that case.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next release, the next artist I have on my list is Kraftwerk. So
yes.
I'm relying on you for that.
Just so happen to have those in hand. And these are another couple of releases that I've waxed poetic about in various videos, most recently on our best surround mixes of the year so far video, which we did with Mike and Ryan. Just to kind of briefly summarize why I think these are so amazing is that they aren't rock and roll records. They're kind of their own genre. Kraftwerk were part band, part art installation. And that basically means that when it comes time to put together an immersive mix, there are no rules to follow. So both of these mixes can be as wild and as innovative as the music itself. And again, I think you can get both of these Blu-rays together for under $50. So can't recommend them highly enough.
Yeah, for sure. The next artist I have on my list is one of my favorite new bands, which is the Pineapple Thief, which of course is headed by Bruce Sword, who is a great surround mixer in his own right, having recently done the Jethro Tull Under Wraps record.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yes, I would hope so. So you're holding up one of them. So I've got 3 releases in front of me, which you can get. Now, the Pineapple Thief have a lot of content out in surround. In fact, I think all their albums, which have been, their first record was in 1999, and their most recent record was in 2024. They've all been mixed in surround now. So some of them are in print, some of them aren't. So what's a good starting point for them? I would say the one you're holding up, which is a kind of a hybrid studio live release called Nothing But the Truth. It was a live stream show they did during the pandemic, where they ran through their set list kind of in like I don't know, like what the thing they're in the video is. It's like a warehouse or something. It's sort of like an empty soundstage. Yeah. And the camera kind of moves in a circle around them. So it's kind of like they're performing like a concert to no audience. Yeah. So you get this kind of effect like it's, studio level sonics, but the energy of a live show. And the set list is kind of like, I wouldn't necessarily call it like a greatest hits, but it's pretty much like there's at least one song from every album or every period of the band. So it's as good a starting point as any. And I think on a similar note is this other compilation release called Give It Back. These are studio re-recordings of older songs. So when the Pineapple Thief originally started in 1999, it was just kind of Bruce Sword by himself in his bedroom, programming drums, like basically like a one-man band. And then as his career went on, he recruited actual musicians, most notably Gavin Harrison, starting in 2016. So the idea behind this release was that originally for the live shows, Gavin was going back through the older songs and learning them to do them at the shows. And they had the idea to basically radically rearrange and re-record the older songs. So even though they're older compositions, these are completely different versions of the songs. Some of them have like extra lyrics, some extra sections, totally different. And the material spans, I think the oldest song on here is from like the year 2000, and the newest song on it is from maybe 2012, 2013. And this also has both 5.1 and Atmos mixes.
Yeah. One thing that I'd like to take a moment and add while you switch gears here is that if you follow Laser CD out of New Jersey, he seems to get these in quite frequently, but they don't last very long. They sell out very quickly. And I check almost every day. And the last time I checked that this was in stock at Laser CD, it was under $15. I think I paid a little bit more, and I don't know how much this costs at other retailers, if it's available at Amazon or not. I'll of course check. But I think for $15, my goodness, this is like 90 minutes of music, and you've got extras, promo videos, behind the scenes, a nice thick booklet included. I mean, it should be illegal, but it isn't. Go check it out.
In general, I think Kscope has some trouble getting stock over to the States. Like, it never seems to last long. So on that note, I would mention as well that you can get all of these records as downloads on IAA. So we've had a partnership going with Kscope for quite a few years. I think Nothing But the Truth was actually the first release we did from them back in 2021. And just to briefly round out the Pineapple Thief discussion, also their latest studio album, It Leads to This, has a standalone Blu-ray release, which you can get, again, for like something like $20 through most online retailers. So next on my list is another one I'm going to rely on you for, which is David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. So this is a standalone Blu-ray that came out in 2024, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah. And it has a new Atmos mix that was done by Ken Scott, the original mixer and producer. And I should mention as well that this is not the first time this album was mixed in surround. There was also a 5.1 release, about like 20 years ago, something like that. That was also by Ken Scott. But I would say the new Atmos version is far superior. Just a much more adventurous mix, better sounding. And, it's one of Bowie's most iconic albums.
Yes.
So to get it in surround in an affordable package, I think you can't go wrong.
Yeah, and good opportunity to mention that we do have some more Bowie titles on the way, potentially on physical media. They're already on streaming. So Bob Clearmountain's mix of Let's Dance is up already. And did you say Earthling is available too?
Yeah, so Let's Dance, mixed by Clearmountain, and Earthling, I don't know who did it, suddenly showed up on Apple Music yesterday.
Yeah.
It's funny how that happens.
And it's a good opportunity. Sorry to interrupt. It's a good opportunity also to mention that if you have an Apple TV, you can stream, all of these mixes that are available on Apple Music. And if you are somebody who's listening to our advice, but still isn't sure what to buy, streaming is an excellent venue to try out new things and, make an informed decision.
Absolutely. That's a great point. But yeah, it is funny how, just to go on a brief tangent, like with Bowie's catalog, like the way it's been handled in surround over the years, a lot of the critical titles haven't been done yet. A lot of them are out of print. Like there was a 5.1 mix of Young Americans that came out maybe like 10 years ago that you can't get now.
And Stage, one of my very favorites.
That was a DVD release in the early 2000s. Yeah, a Space Oddity. There's a streaming only Atmos mix. I think we might have to do a video at some point, like a definitive list of all the Bowie stuff that's in surround, because it's scattered across all different formats and different years that they came out, but
and different qualities too. Like Young Americans is amazing, but it's very different from the stereo mix, and then something like Station to Station I think is less amazing.
I have not heard the 5.1 mix of Station to Station, but like I've read reviews on it that people say it's awful. So
yeah,
I want to find out for myself. But certainly, as far as albums I'd like to hear mixed in surround, those Berlin records I think would all be great in Atmos.
Yeah, I just I did a double feature of Roxy Music's For Your Pleasure, another record that needs an immersive mix.
Yes.
With David Bowie's Low last night, and I thought, oh my goodness, the possibilities here. Now, with Jonathan's point in mind here, I want to take a moment and just ask people who are maybe our regular viewers if you would be interested in us doing these catalog deep dives of artists' material that's available in Atmos or has been released before in 5.1 or whatever is the case. And oddly enough, you and I were discussing Roxy Music since Flesh and Blood has just been released by SDE. We thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to go back and talk about the debut album and also Avalon? So let me know in the comments below if these kind of artist deep dives would be of interest to you, because it's something that Jonathan and I are currently pursuing.
Yeah. So the next title on my list is another relatively recent reissue, which is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Long After Dark. This mix was done by Ryan Oliate, who's kind of like the now sort of custodian of the Tom Petty catalog. He did he produced their last two records, Mojo and Hypnotic Eye, which came out in the early 2010s. And now he's the guy who gets to do the remixes of the older records. And he's a fantastic Atmos mixer. The first one he did was the Wildflowers record, which is still only on streaming, unfortunately. And the Heartbreakers Greatest Hits, again, streaming only, which is also fantastic. But Long After Dark is the first Atmos mix from the catalog to get a physical release on Blu-ray. And it comes not only with the original album, but also like a second album's worth of like outtake songs.
Wow.
So some of these are like alternate takes of the same tracks, but there's a few like extra songs as well. So I think when you put it all together, it's something like between 15 and 20 tracks mixed in Atmos. And this is like, a $20, $25 release. And for kind of like straight ahead rock music, it's a pretty adventurous mix, with a lot of the harmony vocals coming from above, keyboards behind you. And so I hope the success of this reissue means they might be inclined to do physical releases of some of the streaming only ones, and also just continue going through the catalog.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to rely on you for this one, which is Peter Gabriel's latest record, IO, which took what did it take, 20 years for him to finish this record, something like that.
Yeah, I think some of these songs started, or he wrote them back when he finished the previous record, which was what? Up?
That was in what, 2002 that came out?
Yeah.
2003?
Yeah, so some of these songs have been around for a while, but this was among the first Atmos mixes I ever heard. And I remember, finding this album jaw-dropping in terms of fidelity and just the activity of the instruments and such. I would love to give it another go, having fine-tuned my system over the years, because I'm guessing that I'll be just as impressed as I was, if not more so. But what are your thoughts on this album?
I was kind of nervous when I heard it was coming out, because I didn't really like the Up record at all. I have the 5.1 SACD of Up, which is still the only other Gabriel album that's had a complete surround mix. There's like this, I think we've talked about in other videos, there's like a sort of DVD collection that has older songs with videos, where they've done surround mixes of some of them, like they did Sledgehammer and In Your Eyes, all the iconic songs, or at least most of them. So I was worried I wasn't going to like the album, because I didn't really like Up, but pretty much like every song on this record did it for me. I think it's a really good like late career album.
Yeah.
And it's funny how there have been like a lot of those in the last couple years. Like the newest Tears for Fears album I also thought was excellent. I mean, there are other examples for sure of like kind of these older artists coming back and doing great new records. And it's a really interesting Atmos mix because the directive for it was to kind of, for people who've been following this record, like there were 2 different stereo mixes of each song. So there was a set of mixes that were done by Spike Stent, and there was another set of mixes that were done by Chad Blake, which are very different, not just in terms of like balance and tone, but some of them omit instruments that the other one uses. And then for the Atmos mixes, Hans Martin Buff, like his idea was, why don't we actually record new parts to use just for the Atmos mixes? So there are a couple of it's listed in the booklet. You can see the credits, like whatever instruments that Buff is listed as having played are the ones that are only in the Atmos mix. But it's a very different presentation of the album.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not insanely different. Like you could tell they're the same songs, but the little changes in arrangement and balance are interesting. And you could tell like they were really kind of thinking about how to make the Atmos mix as, you know, different and interesting as it could be. Yeah. Which I wish they did for the Lamb. Well, maybe they made it a little too different. Maybe that was the problem.
Well, I mean, that the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is definitely a mix that we don't recommend, even though it is available affordably. So if any of you...
It's available affordably now. It wasn't originally.
That's right. Yeah. Well, or it's about to be or something. But I saw that Rhino have announced the standalone of the Lamb. But I think you and I kind of had mentioned at the time that, gee, it would have been nice if Hans Martin Buff had done the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway mix. But the only other thing I would add, because I think you did a great job of kind of summing up this record, is that Peter Gabriel I think he had just turned 80 or was around 80 when this came out, and his voice sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you.
He sounds incredible on this album. And I actually love this package because the version with the Blu-ray has both the bright and dark side mixes, as well as the Blu-ray containing the Atmos mix. And if I'm not mistaken, I think if you stick the Blu-ray in, you can actually toggle in between the 3 mixes on the disc. So very cool idea. I wish more folks would go to the lengths of creating a world the way that Peter Gabriel does. And before we move off of Peter Gabriel, we should mention that there is an Atmos mix of In Your Eyes. Or no, it's not In Your Eyes. It's Don't Give Up. Don't Give Up. Yeah. There's an Atmos mix of Don't Give Up.
You got me excited there for a minute. I was like, is there an Atmos mix in Your Eyes that I haven't heard? But yes, there is an Atmos mix of Don't Give Up, which was done by Kevin Killen, the original mix engineer. And if rumors hold to be true, he's in the process or has finished mixing the entire So record in Atmos.
Yeah.
So that would be fantastic to get that as a physical release later this year. The only other thing I'll mention before we move off Gabriel is that he's also been kind of periodically releasing new songs. So I don't think, hopefully, well, it seems like IO is not going to be his last record. There's going to be at least one more. They've been releasing the new songs with bright and dark mixes, but I haven't seen Atmos mixes for any of them yet. So hopefully, you know, Buff is going to get to do his thing on the new material as well.
Hope so.
Yeah. So the next artist on my list is Snarky Puppy. And I mentioned the digital release on IA of the We Like It Here album on our mid-year, you know, favorite releases so far. But there have been 3 albums where the Atmos mixes have been released physically. So there's Empire Central from 2023. Then there was a remix of the Silva. Sorry, it's the wrong one. There's a remix of the Silva record, which was originally released in 2015. And then there was this 2025 reissue where they did a new Atmos mix. And then their most recent record, Somni, which came out at the very end of 2025. So you can get these as downloads on IA, and they come with the video. So these are kind of like Nothing But the Truth in the sense that it's sort of like a studio record, but there's video footage of the band playing that goes along with it. Yeah. So it's sort of like not quite live, not quite studio, but it's cool. The two records, Silva and these are kind of like related because they both involve the I hope I'm saying it right, the Metropole Orchestre, which is like this sort of orchestra, and the augmentation of like the regular jazz fusion style of Snarky Puppy with the strings just gives it this like super cinematic. I mean, you could imagine listening. Snarky Puppy is already like a 10-piece band, and then you add like a 50-piece orchestra on top of that, and you have the recipe for a really interesting Atmos mix.
Yeah.
So I think that's as good a pitch as I can give you on these. So whether you get the discs or the downloads, the content is all the same. Really well done. And
it's good a time as any to point out that if you're wondering, how do I play Atmos downloads? You and I did a discussion on your channel concerning the Noemi Atom 4K device, which allows you to hook in an external hard drive, and you can play what are called MKV files, which is the same files that you would like get off of a Blu-ray. And it allows you to get high quality, high definition Atmos music, and in some cases video, such as the Snarky Puppy We Like It Here album. If you're interested in more about this or how you do this, I will try to put that video in the recommendations so you can learn more.
Yes. So kind of the last sort of item I have on my list is we've talked a lot about the Rhino Records label, which is kind of like the catalog division of Warner Brothers. And a lot of these great releases we've talked about have been through them, like some of the ones that Steven has done, like the Phil Collins or the Chicago and Van Morrison. But another interesting initiative they've been doing in recent years are these Quadio discs. So these are standalone Blu-rays that have the vintage 70s quad mixes freshly transferred from the master tapes. So they sound better than any of the original, quad vinyl or tape editions of these albums would have. And it's as good a time as any to mention, we did a very long video talking about our favorite quad mixes, many of which have been reissued on modern media, SACD, Blu-ray, DVD. That's a really good video. I know I say all our videos are good, but I really like that video in particular. So I recommend that one. But I think for both of us, the best Quadio release so far has been Black Sabbath's Paranoid, which is the one we're holding up. Certainly musically, it's my favorite album they've reissued. And sadly, it's the only Sabbath album that's had a surround mix, which is too bad because they're one of those bands I would love the whole catalog in surround. Or at least
especially Sabbath Bloody Sabbath would be
the original 70s run, like the debut through Never Say Die. All those albums would be great in surround. The rumor is they don't have the multi-tracks for any of them, except for Technical Ecstasy, because Steven Wilson did a stereo remix of it maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. So who knows? That could be like an eventual Rhino Atmos release at some point. That would be cool.
So question about Quadio, do they tend to keep these in print? Or do they fall out of print?
So since like the Quadio relaunch, so the original Quadio discs came out in like the early 2010s, like they did Chicago Transit Authority and The Best of Aretha Franklin. Those are both long out of print. They were released on DVD. The Chicago Quadio set that came out about 10 years ago is out of print. But since they relaunched Quadio, like this new standalone series of these like super jewel cases, I don't think any of them have gone out of print. You can get these directly through Rhino, or they have them on Amazon and most online retailers. But generally, there's kind of a buffer period, like they're exclusive to Rhino for like a month or two, and then they start to appear in other places.
I was going to also take the opportunity to recommend Billy Cobham's Spectrum Quadio disc, because that's a release that's an album that I always felt was kind of clustered and sort of impenetrable. And I was really impressed at how much the quad mix in particular drew me in. Now there is a more modern 5.1 mix included on Billy Cobham's Spectrum Quadio, and it's not nearly as interesting as the quad mix. And the other thing to mention is that you did say that they are available on Amazon. Occasionally they do go on sale.
Yes.
I think I got the Billy Cobham for about $18. So keep an eye out on those.
My other favorite Quadio release, which we've talked about in another video, is the Joni Mitchell box set, which has
Yes.
4 of her albums in both quad and Atmos.
Yeah.
And one of which was previously unreleased. The
Yeah.
Atmos, the quad mix of the Miles of Isles album was prepared in the 70s, but never released for some reason. So after like 50 years, they were able to finally put that out. And there have been a couple of releases in the series where they've found like previously unknown or unreleased quad mixes. 2 of the most interesting ones I've got were Rod Stewart's Atlantic Crossing album and War's Why Can't We Be Friends, which has 2 of their biggest songs, Lowrider and, of course, the title track. These are both really interesting. So, yeah, the Quadio releases, I mean, you can get a sense of what is available for them to reissue just by looking at what albums were released in quad in the 70s. But it's a really kind of interesting mix of material. You've got some hard rock stuff like Sabbath. You've got kind of like R&B soul like War, The Spinners, singer-songwriters like, you know, Carly Simon or Joni Mitchell. There's an Alice Cooper album, 2 Alice Cooper albums that were mixed in quad, Muscle of Love and $1 Billion Babies. So yeah, it's a really interesting mix of material. Some of these albums I doubt would ever be considered for an Atmos mix, you know, in 2026. So it's cool to hear the vintage surround versions, and vintage quad mixes can be very interesting in the way they pull the instruments apart.
Yeah, more adventurous.
I mean, you mentioned Spectrum. Like basically the philosophy of that mix is like Billy Cobham's in front of you, Jan Hammer's in one rear speaker, and Tommy Boland's in the other. So it's just kind of like you're surrounded by the 3 musicians, and like that's it. Like there's no frills, no crazy panning, just kind of like you're in the studio surrounded by the musicians. And I think that really worked on that album.
Yeah, and to quote Hawkwind, it's a sonic attack.
Yeah. Though I think there are, I mean, maybe we should review that album at some point because we both really like it. But there are a couple of tracks that are just kind of like Billy Cobham doing like a long drum solo. And on those, I think the drums are mixed like all over the room. Like I remember hearing like some toms in the back. But yeah, that's a great record for sure. And on the topic of Rhino, we mentioned some of the ones that Steven Wilson has done of modern Atmos reissues, but they've also done some other Atmos discs. So some recent ones we've talked about are Grateful Dead, Working Man's Dead, which has a new Atmos mix by Mickey Hart alongside the old 5.1 version. The Stooges too.
Let me say something real quick about Grateful Dead. That album has grown on me.
Oh, well, there you go.
I didn't love it when we reviewed it on like the 5 extraordinary Atmos mixes video or whatever that was. I was like, I like some of it. I don't love it, but I've had Casey Jones stuck in my head for about a week. And I've been thinking it's time to revisit that album because it's grown on me quite a bit. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, this is one of those ones where the 5.1 mix on DVD was really hard to get for a while, and I paid a lot for it. Like in 2018 or 19, I think I paid like $50 for the DVD of this. And now you have this $25 disc that has both the 5.1 and the Atmos mix. And I think it also has the remixed stereo on it as well. So can't go wrong with this. I wish we could talk about Blues for Allah in this video, but unfortunately it's out of print.
Yeah, they need to bring that one back in print. And, you know, they also need to get Steven's mix of American Beauty. That's the right title, correct? Okay. Yeah, they need to get that one and Europe 72 because those are on streaming. And I'm sort of like you are with a lot of this prog stuff. Like maybe it wasn't your thing, but thanks to immersive audio, it's becoming an interest of yours. And that's sort of how I feel about the Grateful Dead, because they were always a band that seemed to have this huge, daunting catalog. And I'd heard some, snatches of their music over the years. And I thought, you know what, that's not for me. Or maybe I heard some stuff and thought, okay, that's all right. But I'm more interested in some other stuff. But thanks to these albums being issued in Atmos, I've listened to Blues for Allah, and now I've listened to that one. And I'm starting to really like the Grateful Dead. So I'm glad that they're doing standalone Blu-rays of the mixes, and I hope that this trend continues because I think those Steven Wilson mixes need to come out.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like American Beauty was the album that got me into the Dead, and I like it a little bit more than this one. But I think the one
Yeah.
that has improved the most for me from hearing it in surround was Blues for Allah.
Yeah. That's an outstanding album.
Yeah. So I had briefly held it up before, but I think, have we talked about this in a video? The
We did.
Stooges twofer?
Very briefly. Yeah, we didn't go in depth, which is unusual for us.
So this is 2 albums on 1 disc, which is, you don't get that too often.
Can't beat that.
And I think the Atmos mixes of these albums are better than they have any right to be. Because
Agreed.
Yeah, they're older albums, relatively sparse instrumentation, but they work really well in Atmos.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, I mean, you said it pretty well, but I just would add that I find these albums interesting because they sit chronologically between psychedelia and punk. And even though they are really stripped back, the psychedelic aspect of it, I think, does lend itself really well to Atmos. And, I can't decide which one I like better. Maybe I like the debut a little bit better, but these are still really excellent mixes. And yeah, again, you're getting 2 for the price of 1. So you can't go wrong.
For sure. And even though we just mentioned these 2, like if you go on the Rhino website, there are a bunch of other like standalone Atmos Blu-rays they've done. Like there's Carly Simon's No Secrets, Fleetwood Mac, the debut and Rumors, Prince's Purple Rain. They've done some really good ones. And I always say this, but like it would be so easy to do expensive box sets of these albums, and yet they've opted not to do that. So
yeah.
I think kind of that was the last item on my list, but to kind of summarize this video, we've talked about a lot of albums. It's a good time to be getting into surround music. There's a lot of albums that are readily available at a lower price point. It's a wide breadth of different styles and genres. It wasn't so long ago that the only surround albums you could buy were like 70s prog albums. Like when I was getting into surround, it was kind of like there's the King Crimson releases, there's the Tull ones, and that's kind of it. But that is not that that's a bad thing. I like those bands, but I think the fact that there's more different styles of music from different decades and different eras available in surround can only be a good thing.
Yeah. And I feel like being interested in immersive audio has opened me up to a lot of bands that I don't think I would have ever given an ear to. So yeah, I want to thank Jonathan, of course, for joining us today and sharing your expertise as always. And for those viewers of you at home, let me know if you are an experienced Atmos listener, if you found something here that was new to you, you'll have to let us know. Also, if you would like to add your own recommendations, you may do so below. If you're not an experienced Atmos listener, if you're somebody who's just getting into this format or even 5.1 or quad, let us know which one of these releases is of most interest to you. Is there anything surprising to you? Yeah, we'd love to hear some feedback from you. As for us, I think the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the Chris Squire release soon, Fish Out of Water. And we're also very excited to talk about the new Roxy Music release, Flesh and Blood. And as I'd kind of alluded to earlier, and I'm just going to reiterate, I think we're looking at doing like a history of Roxy Music and surround sound, because there's only 3 titles, but they're very interesting and they're very different too. So if that's something of interest to you, please let us know in the comments below, because that's something we would like to do and I think we would enjoy doing. But until then, don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to both of our channels, my E&B About channel, as well as Jonathan's immersive audio album. And until then, it's been a lot of fun, and look forward to talking to you folks very, very soon. All right, Jonathan, thanks again, and take care, my friend.
You too. Thanks.